Reese Goose Box. We've been towing with it for 1 year now. So what do we think about it? Well, stick around because we're going to give our full review on it. Plus, we're going to go over some tips and tricks for hitching up with it. Don't go anywhere. Hey guys, welcome back to Why Wait. Today, we're going to talk about the Reese Goose Box. We're going to give you our review of it after towing with it for 1 year. We're going to talk about if we still like it or not. We're going to talk about some pros and cons of using the Reese Goose Box. And at the end of the video, we're going to give you some tips and tricks on how to make hitching up and using the Reese Goose Box a little bit easier for those of you who already have one. So a year ago, we did a video on installing the Reese Goose Box. Now I'll put a link to that right up here in case you guys haven't seen that video or if you're curious on how to install this by yourself. It's not too difficult. You can actually do it with one person, even though it's very heavy. And in that video, I go over the ways to install the Reese Goose Box and switch it out from your current pin box, just using one person so you don't have to have a bunch of people and a bunch of extra hands to get it done. So at the end of the video, if you want to go click on that and check that out, or if maybe you've actually just come here to look how to install it, well, you need to go watch that. So we've been towing with the Reese Goose Box for over 1 year now. What do we think? Well, we love it. Now, to be honest with you, I've never used a traditional fifth wheel, but that's not to say I haven't sat in a truck when somebody has towed with one. And the difference for me that I've noticed is with the Reese, you definitely don't get that chucking and bucking sound and all that play like you seem to get in a traditional fifth wheel hitch. Now, to each their own. I know people who have the B&W hitch, they love it, and I'm sure it's a great hitch. I'm just going to basically tell you my opinion of the Reese and what I think about it since we've been using it and just from what I know of other fifth wheel hitches. Now, we did have the Anderson hitch for a few years before we started using the Reese. It's a similar hitch style. It's also kind of like a gooseneck towing. But with the Reese, the way it sits on that ball and the way it pivots and moves, you just don't get any of that chucking and bucking and back and forth motion. It's got a little pivot bar in there that helps out with that, not to mention the dual shocks and the airbag inside the pin box, which just takes away a lot of that up and down motion and play. The truck and trailer seem to be as one and kind of move together. It seems to be a very smooth system, and it's actually a lot smoother than the Anderson hitch, which, by the way, I had no problem with, but when comparing the two, I've definitely preferred the Reese hitch since I had the Anderson. And again, another downside with the Anderson was, obviously, it's still taking up bed space. So with the Reese Goose Box, we still love the fact that when we're towing, there's nothing in the bed, and when we're not towing, there's nothing in the bed. For us, that's just a huge plus. Now, what are some other pros and cons of the Reese hitch? Well, one pro for sure of the Reese is you don't have to do the tug test anymore. When you hook up to a traditional fifth wheel, you always have to kind of give it a little bit of tug, make sure it's hooked correctly, otherwise you pull your truck away and the camper falls on the bed of your truck. May seem kind of silly, but it seems to happen all the time because I've seen plenty of trucks dented from where the camper falls on it and see plenty of stories about it. So knowing that once you're hooked up with a gooseneck style towing, you don't have to do a tug test, you're on the ball, you're good to go. And another pro of the Reese, of course, is again, you're freeing up your bed space and you're losing some weight by not having a 200-pound fifth wheel hitch in the bed of your truck. And another thing that's great for many of you with the Reese Goose Box is there's no removing or installing the hitch. Now, we full-time RV and other full-time RVers probably leave their fifth wheel hitch in the truck, but I know a lot of people who have to remove it all the time and put it in their garage and take it in and out. It's not easy moving a 200-pound hitch in and out of the bed of your truck by yourself. So with the Reese Goose Box, all you do is have the ball in the bed of your truck and you really just can't beat that. And lastly, the Reese just seems to give you a much softer, smoother ride. I just don't see any way that a standard fifth wheel hitch can simulate the same thing that a Reese can, or any gooseneck style for that matter. Sitting on that ball, having all that rotation like that is a lot more free. Not to mention when you're on an angle, you're not pulling up on that fifth wheel hitch. As the camper tilts, there's a lot more room on that ball for the camper to move around and side to side without putting stress and frame on your hitch or your truck wanting to pull that fifth wheel hitch up as the camper is kind of cocked off to the side. And by the way, if you guys have towed with both a standard fifth wheel hitch and the Reese Goose Box, please comment down below and let me know your thoughts on which one you like the most. I would love to actually hear that because most people that I do talk to that have switched to the Reese Goose Box really love it and prefer it over their standard fifth wheel hitch that they used to have. So what are some cons of the Reese Goose Box then that we've noticed? Well, for one, it may be a little harder to hitch up. And when I say a little harder to hitch up, pretty much backing up because you cannot see your fifth wheel hitch anymore. With a standard fifth wheel hitch, you can look in your back mirror, you're gonna see the kingpin slide in, and you can pretty much, unless you have a tall toolbox, you can pretty much see it hooking up. Well, with the ball sitting low in the bed of the truck, unless you have some cameras in the bed of your truck, it can be a little bit more difficult to line up and hitch up. Also, you may have to crawl into the bed of your truck because you need to hook up safety chains, and that may be a con for some of you. For some of us, it's not a big deal. But we're going to go ahead and get into some of that here in a minute and talk about ways that you can hook up with the Reese without ever having to get in the bed of your truck. And lastly, maybe one con for some people, I look at it as a pro, would be the fact that you have to fill an airbag up, which may just be an extra step. And again, you don't fill this airbag up until after you've hitched up and put the weight of the camper fully in the bed of the truck. And then you have to go ahead and inflate the Reese until you see this small bar, even with the hole, and then you know you got the right PSI in the bag. You really only have to do this once every few months. Once you kind of do it, it kind of holds the air and you're pretty good, unless you've been sitting around for a while. Depending on the temperature outside, just like tires, the air can either inflate or deflate in that bag and you may have to adjust it. But again, we'll get into a tip here in a minute where you don't have to crawl in the bed of your truck to air that up either. One thing I do like about the Reese Goose Box too is you can really adjust how much room you have between your bed rails and the overhang of your fifth wheel, because when you install the Reese Goose Box, there's different mounting brackets that you can use to work with your truck depending on how far you need that pushed up or down to give you more clearance. We have a good 7.5 inch clearance. We're right on where I want to be. You can even use an offset ball that they make if you want the camper to sit a little bit further back in the bed of your truck. For those of you with a short bed truck, the Reese still works fine, but I would definitely recommend getting that recessed ball that actually moves back a little bit to give you more room. Okay, so let's break down some little tips and tricks I found to make hooking up with the Reese a lot easier and I never have to get in the bed of my truck. So the first thing we do is we actually have these little, I call them tennis ball things. They're basically magnetic poles. They extend to certain heights. They have the yellow ball attached to them. They're from Reese. I think they're called the Reese Power Tower. And I attach one right to the middle of the Reese Goose Box, line it right up in the center, and then I put one in the bed of my truck right in the center. And I actually took a little piece of round metal, a little washer, and I actually screwed it into my plastic bed frame, centered perfectly. So when I back up, all I have to do is line those two tennis balls up perfectly. And I even have it so not only when I back up will I be dead on straight, but you also, sometimes you have to wonder, well, how far back do I need to go? You may have it lined up straight, but you don't need to stop. Did you go past your ball? Are you not at your ball yet? Well, I positioned mine in the bed of the truck, so as I back up, and as soon as the Reese Goose Box hits that pole, that tennis ball, I can see it touch and push forward. I know that I'm perfectly lined up over my ball to hitch up. So we found that to be a great trick. This way you're not constantly getting in and out of the truck, checking, looking. Also, if you have cameras and you mount a camera in the bed of your truck so you can see basically when you're lined up perfectly underneath it, that's another good idea as well. Now, something else I did was, instead of always having to crawl into the bed of my truck to hook up my safety chains, I basically reversed them. So now when I back up my truck and I drop it down on there, all I have to do is grab the chains in the bed of my truck and hook them up onto the Reese Goose Box instead of vice versa. It just seems to work out for me. And then when we're sitting somewhere for a while, I'll probably just take them out of the bed of my truck and I just hang them back on the Reese Goose Box when we're not moving. So a little trick that I kind of like, and that way I don't have to get in there to hook that up. One thing that's nice about it with the Reese Goose Box is when you do drop onto the ball in the bed of your truck, you don't have to pull the handle to lock it or anything like that. You just leave it in the one position. As the Reese Goose Box comes down, you can see the little handle move back for a second, then it flops forward and it locks into place. So you don't have to worry about that either. And then you have to check your air, or usually depending on what generation Reese you have, it's either located on the top of your Reese Goose Box, or it can be underneath your Reese Goose Box, or even on the side. Sometimes you can reach over your bed rail, reach the little air valve, and air up. On mine, it's the generation 2, it's underneath the Reese, and you really can't get to it unless you're in the bed of your truck. So I have a 6-foot section of air hose that I leave permanently attached to my Reese, and that way when I'm hitching up, I can back up, that's already attached, and then I can grab the air hose and I can air up from standing outside of my truck, and I don't have to, again, worry about getting into the bed of my truck to air up when I need to. You can see I can also reach my breakaway cable right here and I just hook it to the back of my truck. Make sure you secure it somewhere to your truck that's safe. That's another thing that does not require me getting into the bed of my truck. So I can pretty much hook up to the Reese Goose Box without ever having to worry to crawl in and out of my truck, because I know that's why some people don't like the Reese. They're just not mobile enough to get in and out and be messing with the safety chains and things like that. So by following some of these tips and tricks, you should never have to really crawl into the bed of your truck, unless you want to use a new feature of theirs. And you can see right here we have a padlock, and there's a little option right here if you want to, for extra safety or security. You can put this padlock after you're hitched up right through this hole right here that they've added on the second generation Reese Goose Box. And that's just a little peace of mind safety, just to make sure that it's not going to come back up off the ball. It's not something that's necessary, but we have it. Sometimes I do it, sometimes I don't. But it's also a way to kind of protect your camper. You can also lock it up when you're just sitting stationary and make sure nobody can come and hook up unless they want to break that lock off. So overall, there's very little maintenance with this. You can see there's a Zerk fitting right here, and every once in a while all you have to do is just get some, Lucas Red and Tacky, hook it up, pump a few squirts of grease into there, and that's about it for maintenance on this one. And once in a while you can maybe spray some white lithium grease. I like to use Boschel T9 and just spray that right on your ball. Other than that, there's nothing you really have to do, and I like that as well. It's a pretty low-key, low-maintenance style of hitch that you just really don't have to mess with too much, and that's kind of nice. Not a lot of moving parts. So I hope this helps some of you guys out who are maybe thinking about a Reese Goose Box, or for those of you that have it, a couple of tips and tricks to help you out. I will say that this is pretty much compatible with almost all fifth wheels nowadays, even the Rhino pin box, which it used to not be compatible with. And again, this is the only gooseneck style pin box that is backed by Lippert, and it will not void your warranty on your frame. Reese goes through all sorts of testing with these. It does not put extra torque or flex on your frame like you hear about. That's just a myth. Again, this is approved by Lippert, who basically makes all fifth wheel frames, so you don't have to worry about it voiding any kind of frame warranty or anything like that. Guys, I hope this helped you out, and as always, get out there, start your full-time RV adventure, because why wait? We'll see you next week.